Russia has once again reaffirmed its stance on the now collapsed grain deal by striking Ukraine's main inland port on the Danube River on Wednesday. After the collapse of the Russian grain deal, Russia has now attacked a Ukrainian port early on Wednesday that hit Izmail, Ukraine's main inland port, which is across the Danube River, which has now triggered a spike in global grain prices. Soon after the attack, Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky accused Vladimir Putin of trying to trigger a global catastrophe. In a video address, Zelensky has said Moscow is waging a battle for a global catastrophe. In their madness, they need the world food markets to collapse. They need a price crisis. They need disruption in supplies. Ukrainian sources have said over 40,000 tons of grains, which had been destined for countries in Africa as well as China and Israel, now stand destroyed. Meanwhile, in the middle of raging war between Russia and Ukraine, Brazil's president has also now said in a news conference that his country is working for peace in Ukraine, but neither its leader nor Russia are prepared to talk peace. He's also added that Brazil's role is to try to arrive at a peace proposal together with others for when both countries would want it. Let's also now put out some key questions. Is Russia really prepared as far as a peace talk is concerned? And what really is this Black Sea deal? Let's break down those details. You would know that Ukraine is one of the world's biggest exporters of food grains. Russia invaded Ukraine's ports, which led to soaring prices. In 2022, the deal was brokered by the United Nations to lift Russia's naval blockade. Then Moscow remained miffed that none of its demands are met. They said everything we agreed on is not being fulfilled. So what really is the way forward? Our colleague Sanjay Suri is now back with us on the broadcast. Sanjay, could you just put this in better context to help us understand where things currently stand?
Well, the position is that Ukraine is the breadbasket of Europe, and for good reason. And the war brought an end of grain exports, and there was a deal then brokered between Ukraine, Russia, and grain involving Turkey and the United Nations. Turkey, because through the Black Sea, the shipments go out through the Bosphorus Strait into the Sea of Marmara, then into the Aegean Sea, and beyond into the Mediterranean. Now, this was a deal that was agreed in July of 2022 to let grain from Ukraine through to feed the hungry of the world, as it was said, and to keep prices under control. On July the 17th of this year, Russia ended the deal. It said that the world and the West particularly is not respecting its own rights to its own exports. Russia has had a bumper harvest. It needs to sell, it wants to sell and earn from it, and also use that as political leverage. And now that deal is being reconsidered. Putin is due to visit Turkey, Istanbul later this month. Erdoğan has been a key player in trying to negotiate a deal, and there is some indication that there will be an attempt to renegotiate this deal. Russia, of course, is demanding that Western sanctions should spare its restrictions on payments and other logistics for its own grains to go through to the world.
Sanjay, what is the kind of reaction that's coming in from Ukraine? I saw the reaction that came from President Zelensky, who's gone on to hit out at Russia, saying they want a global catastrophe. They want this sort of price crisis because that will work in their favor. What are the other kind of reactions that are coming in?
You know, over the last day or two, and even yesterday, the Russians have again bombed river ports on the Danube, and those have been sought to be used by Ukraine as some sort of fractional alternative to the Black Sea for export of grain. Now, Russia has started bombing these ports, and that is hardly likely to help its own argument that it is seeking to beat sanctions for the interests of the world's good and for the interest of the hungry around the world, and to export its own grains to the parts of the world that need them. Now, this kind of bombing is certain to be resisted by Ukraine. Ukraine is at the receiving end of this. So Ukraine is reacting very strongly. It is seeking to convince Western powers particularly that it is not in their interests or in anybody's interest to try and ease the restrictions or to give in to the bargaining demands that the Russians are putting forward.
Okay.
And Russians certainly can expect to encounter resistance militarily and politically from Ukraine.
Okay, Sanjay, we'll have to leave that conversation there. Thanks a lot for helping us with those details. Some other reports also now coming in.
Russia attacked Ukraine's main inland port on the Danube River on Wednesday. The strikes pushed up global food prices as Moscow ramped up its use of force to prevent Ukrainian grain exports. Video released by Ukraine's Southern Operational Command showed ruined port buildings in Izmail, in the Odessa region. The attacks forced ships to halt and drop anchor as they prepared to dock and load up with Ukrainian grain, in defiance of a de facto blockade Russia reimposed in mid-July. Izmail has since served as the main route for Ukraine's grain exports. Photographs released by the Ukrainian prosecutor's office showed at least 2 wrecked silos. Reuters wasn't able to verify their location or date. There were no immediate reports of casualties. Russia has relentlessly attacked Ukrainian agricultural and port infrastructure since reintroducing the blockade. Kyiv says its aim is to persuade shippers and their insurance companies that Ukrainian ports are unsafe to resume exports. 2 industry sources told Reuters operations at the port were suspended. The United Nations has warned Russia's decision to abandon the grain deal, brokered by the UN and Turkey, could cause a food crisis and hunger in the world's poorest countries.
Now, for the Russian state, this is not just a battle against our freedom or just against our country. Moscow is waging a battle for a global catastrophe. These insane want the world's food market to collapse. They need price crisis. They need disruption in supply. Someone there thinks they can profit from this. Someone in Moscow hopes to gain something for themselves. These are very, very dangerous hopes.
Це дуже небезпечні. У Бразил та наquele hall de países.
Brazil is in the role of the countries that are trying to look for a road that allow us to use the word peace. For the time being, we haven't heard that neither Zelensky nor Putin have the idea of, oh, we will stop. Let's negotiate. For now, they are in the phase where they say, I'm going to win, I'm going to win, I'm going to win. The first thing we are doing is we are not accepting to participate in the war. The first attitude to build peace is to not want to partake in war.
A primeira atitude para construir a paz é não querer participar da guerra.
Now bring in our guest. We have a member of parliament from Ukraine, S. Yurash, also now joining us. Good to have you with us to try and understand how is Ukraine seeing this move by Russia. The United States now has been informed that Russia possibly would want to see a relook as far as the Black Sea grain deal is concerned. How is Ukraine viewing it?
The reality is that Russians have been showing to the entirety of the world they don't care about the prospect of hunger that exists in the Indo-Pacific, and the reality is that as far as the Chinese, as far as the Indian, as far as the global priorities, it should be pushing Russia to return and resume its understanding that we will have to try and provide supplies for the Indo-Pacific in its needs to feed the growing populations there.
Now, we all know that Ukraine is one of the world's biggest exporters as far as food grains is concerned. Russia, when they invaded Ukrainian ports, it led to soaring prices. Why do you think there is a reconsideration that's coming as far as Russia is concerned?
Well, Russia has been flip-flopping on its commitments throughout the conflict that began way back in 2014. So it's no surprise to us that it's being inconsistent here now. As far as the fact that we are trying to continue the work in providing the global grain supply, it's Ukrainian lifeline through the ports in the Danube, as well as some other means that we will pursue. Because again, we see that commitment to resume and rebuild the connection to the global south as necessary.
Now, we have all seen reports of how Russia has attacked a Ukrainian port early on Wednesday that we're understanding hit Izmail. Could you talk to us about the extent of damage as far as that port is concerned?
Russia's been attacking our ports throughout the war. It has occupied some. We recaptured some as well. As far as the Russian attacks on Ismail, it continues where it began weeks before that in Odessa, in terms of trying to destroy the biggest port in Ukraine that Odessa is. Ismail is just a continuation of that. The battle in the air as far as trying to tackle the Russian rocket attacks and drone attacks on Ukraine infrastructure is something that we have to deal with almost every single day in Ukraine. So it's but a continuation of horrible Russian policy.
Lastly, I just want to understand, there's a very interesting reaction that's coming in from the president of Brazil, who's gone on to say that neither Ukraine, neither Russia are ready for peace talks, even though we want to help them out to try and get a solution. How do you see the kind of appeal that is being made for peace?
We see it as necessary, and as soon as Russia leaves us alone and lets our nation decide our own future, we can have peace right away. Peace can happen tomorrow if Russia finally leaves us to choose our own future. Because again, this is a war about whether Ukrainians will choose their future or whether former imperial power that Russia is will choose it for us. Again, we are a sovereign state. We are a sovereign nation that shall decide our own future. We will not delegate that right
Okay.
to any other power, no matter what.
Okay. Appreciate you taking out the time and joining us here. Pleasure speaking to you.